Good day everyone. For today's topic, it's about Japanese invasion in the Philippines. The Japanese occupation or invasion of the Philippines occurred between 1942 and 1945 when Imperial Japan occupied the Commonwealth of the Philippines during World War II. The invasion of the Philippines started on December 8, 1941, 10 hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The Japanese planned to occupy the Philippines as part of their plan for a Greater East Asia War in which their Southern Expeditionary Army Group seized sources of raw materials in Malaya and the Netherlands East Indies, while the combined fleet neutralized the United States Pacific Fleet. Douglas MacArthur was an American military leader who served as the General Army in the United States as well as a Field Marshal to the Philippine Army. General MacArthur declared the Manila as an open city to spare it from further destruction. General Jonathan Wainwright, a career American Army officer and the commander of Allied forces in the Philippines at the time Japan surrendered to the United States during World War II. He was recipient a Medal of Honor for his courageous leadership during the fall of the Philippines. General Jonathan Wainwright took post as a commander of USAF upon MacArthur's departure for Australia, and it is the time that General MacArthur stated his famous line, "I shall return." General Edward P. King was a major general in the United States Army who gained prominence for leading the defense of the Bataan Peninsula against the Japanese invasion of the Philippines. On April 9, 1942, General Edward P. King, the commander forces to Bataan, surrendered to prevent further destruction and injury. Bataan Death March, held in April 9, 1942 to April 17. The Bataan Death March was the forcible transfer by the Imperial Japanese Army of 60,000 to 80,000 American and Filipino prisoners of war from Sisay Point, Bagak, Bataan, and Matapilos to Camp Odel, Capas, Tarlac, San Fernando, Pampanga, where the prisoners forced to march until they died. In fact, the 76,000 starving and sick American and Filipino defenders in Bataan surrendered, and they were forced to endure the Bataan Death March, on which 70,000 to 10,000 died or murdered. The 13,000 survivors on corridor surrendered. George B. Vargas, a former Prime Minister of the Philippines in 1943 to 1945, and he was also a Filipino lawyer, diplomat, and youth advocate. He was appointed as chairman of the Executive Commission of the Japanese-sponsored government. Economic condition. Economy became worse and backward. Inflation happened due to overprinting of Mickey Mouse money. During the Japanese occupation, the government issued the fiat money known as the Japanese government issued Philippine fiat piso or Japanese peso. These were particularly worthless that the people called this Mickey Mouse money because they look similar to play money. Social condition. The people were full of fear and anxiety. The Kipitai, or the dreaded military police, was the military police arm of the Imperial Japanese Army from 1881 to 1945 that also served as a secret police force. In addition, the Kipitai arrested or killed those suspected of being anti-Japanese. Jose Abad Santos, a former Chief Justice of the Philippines. He was a victim of Japanese torture because he refused to collaborate with the Japanese. Makapili, the Makabayang Katipunan ng mga Filipino or Patriotic Association of Filipinos, was a militant group formed in the Philippines in December 8, 1944 during World War II to give military aid to the Imperial Japanese Army. They are notorious collaborators who often acted as spies in Japanese. Haiku, significant cultural influences of the Japanese. Its symbolizes what it truly means to be Japanese. It captures the view of the Japanese people on topics such as aesthetics, perception of nature, philosophy, existential thought, and emotions. Whittier East Asian Co-Prosperity Sphere and Asia for the Asians, a program and slogan of the Japanese to attract supporters, was a imperialist corrupt which was developed in the Empire of Japan and propagated to Asian population which were occupied by it from 1931 to 1945. By 1990, Japan's population had expanded to nearly 45 million. Causes of Japanese expansion: acquire territories to accommodate its growing population. 2. To have markets abroad. 3. To have source of raw materials. 4. To become leaders of Asian nation. 5. Resurgence of militarism and ultra-nationalism. Impact of Japanese occupation. 1. Establishment of puppet government on October 14, 1943. 2. Sluggish economy. 3. Prominent Filipinos were forced to cooperate with the Japanese such as Laurel Vargas, Benigno Aquino, Senor Claro, Emerico, and others. In collaborating with the Japanese, the Filipino leaders claimed that they were in fact acting to parry the shocks of conquest, using their position to repress the people from the violent impact of war. Reason for collaboration with the Japanese: to continue their leadership, to protect their wealth. The anti-Americans genuinely cooperated with the Japanese. Artemio Ricarte, former general who refused to accept American rule. Leon Villaforte, former general who supported the Japanese. Benigno Ramos, leader of the Sakdal movement. He established the Ganap Party and the Makapili Organization, and he advocated the independence of the Philippines from the United States, who collaborated with Japan. The Ganap Party, that was founded by Benigno Ramos, was a Filipino political party that grew from the Sakdalista movement. The main goal of being Sakdalista, they wanted to complete an immediate independence from the United States of America, which crippling taxation. The movement was born out of frustration with the corruption and inequality. Traditional elite and landlord left their towns and replaced by guerrilla politicians who took over the municipal and provincial positions. Guerrilla means engaging in irregular warfare that carrying out harassment and sabotage. The brutality and destruction of the Japanese occupation, guerrilla groups emerged. Hukbalahap, hukbong bayan laban sa mga Hapon. Guerrilla group in Panay led by Macario Peralta and Tomas Cantazar. Japanese occupation led to moral social breakdown. Filipino women were made as sick slaves or comfort women. The Japan occupied the Philippines for over 3 years, until the surrender of Japan. A highly effective guerrilla campaign by Philippine resistance forces controlled 60% of the islands, mostly jungle and mountain areas. MacArthur supplied them by submarine and sent reinforcements and officers. Filipinos remained loyal to the United States, partly because of the American guarantee of independence, and also because the Japanese had pressed large numbers of Filipinos into work details and put young Filipino women into protest. Philippines had suffered great loss of life and tremendous physical destruction by the time the war was over. An estimated 527,000 Filipinos, both military and civilians, have been killed from all causes. Of this, between 131,000 and 164,000 were killed in 72 war crime events. It is one of the deadliest events in all Philippine history.